Hey everybody, welcome back to the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. I'm your host, Gordo Gambles, and welcome back to the full card breakdown. This time for UFCDenver, we have ourselves a nice little fight card at elevation, 11 fights culminating in Namajunas versus Tracy Cortez in that main event. A pretty decent 11 fight card filled with short notice replacements, that seems to be the trend recently, and some fights that will be occurring at elevation with hopefully a lot of action packed in there. We've had a really interesting week with these fights coming together on short notice, with these salaries coming together on short notice on DraftKings, but nonetheless, after a week off of fights last week, we have some here, we have some entertainment to go after, and some money to hopefully go out there and win. As always, the like button down below, subscribe to the channel, check out Established to Run, check out Coolbet, check out this channel here for other stuff I may put out here as well. I'm just happy to have some fights to talk about here, and I look forward to hopefully make some money on them. Let's dive in.
So it's the next day, it seems to be the trend, but there is a new fight. Not even a cancellation, but just a straight up new fight. So let's talk about that real quick before I get this video started. Darius Flowers, Evan Elder. Interesting matchup, let's just put it that way. Surprised to have it short notice booked, and I wouldn't talk about it, but it does have some pretty big DFS implications. Darius Flowers, very powerful guy, very round one heavy, very explosive, has very good hands, enough to get that first round finish, but aside from that, not very good cardio, gives up down the fight, can be knocked out, not the most resilient, and fighting at elevation on short notice, putting out a statement saying he doesn't want to fight there. It seems like Evan Elder is the side this week. He's a minus 375 favorite for that reason, and I do think he is the rightful favorite to get it done. But because of the way that Evan Elder fights, him being so aggressive and seeing a guy like Flowers really not only give up, but throw with fight any intention, I think it's a good one target on DraftKings. I pick Evan Elder on the money line to win. Maybe not to bet it, but he is my pick to win this week. I do think it's in by finish. Because of that, he's going to be a pretty good option. I expect him to slot in around 9.4 this week, and if so, a very good option at the top range. Kind of a pivot off Bonfim, though, because Bonfim is so explosive early on. And then Flowers remains that punt play in the bottom range. If he wins, he's going to score very well first round finish, but aside from that, Elder should win this fight at a high clip. Flowers round 1, Elder round 2 or 3. Should end inside the distance. It should be a fun fight. Let's see how it goes down, but give me Evan Elder to get it done.
Get the fight night started with the 11-5 Josh Fremd versus the 10-3 Andre Petroski, in what is a very tough battle to break down, let's put it that way. I think when you look at it from face value, you have a guy in Andre Petroski who I just think is the better UFC talent, a guy who is a very solid wrestler. He's very physically imposing, decent striking. I mean, his cardio is definitely not there. His fundamental volume strike on the feet isn't there, but he's very physically imposing. He can get the fight down to the mat all the time. He can win clinch exchanges, and I've seen him compete at a decent UFC level. Josh Fremd, though, doesn't seem to have all that. He's a guy who I think doesn't really excel at anything. He's a dog, don't get me wrong there, but he's a very mid-striker, mid-grappler. He can be hit, he can be taken out in his own right, he can be submitted, but what he does do very well is he fights through adversity. He likes to go out there and put everything he has into his fights, and I do think he has the better cardio of the two in this matchup. Because of that, when you look at this from a macro perspective, who I still see being in the UFC a year from now, Andre Petroski, he can get wins at this level. I know he's coming off a couple losses, but I know he can strike decent on the feet. I know he's got incredible wrestling shot go there, but on a fight like this, at elevation, where the cardios will be drained, we've talked about the holes that Petroski has in his grappling and let's say cardio in the third round. It really gives me some qualms about picking him in this matchup. I think that Josh Fremd is a very, very live fighter to win that, because I've seen him push through adversity. I've seen him be not only a guy who I can trust his cardio more, but a guy who will just throw more volume on the feet, who is more, let's say, prepared to go into the fire, dig deeper, and have more resiliency. And for that reason, I'm very close to picking it. I think at the end of the day, though, I will side with Andre Petroski. I think when it comes down to it, the biggest difference here, the biggest gap in any category is the wrestling Petroski has. I think he's just a way more physically imposing wrestler, and I think he should be able to gain some top control enough to win this fight. Now, if the price is right, I'll take some Fremd round 3. I'm not afraid to sprinkle those round 3 props. You guys know me, but until I see Petroski's cardio fade, he will be my pick to win. I just think he has more tools to get it done. He is the better fighter. I want to have my picks on. I don't want to have my money on him, but my picks on this week, because I do think for as long as they're fresh, he is the better fighter, who projects better long-term of the two. However, like I said, Fremd is live as the fight goes on. DraftKings-wise, it's intriguing because Petroski is listed as the underdog, and at 7.9K, he is no stranger to some solid performances. 117 against Yazong, 104 against Turman, 106 against Gilman. He has had the opportunity to go out there, land takedowns, score very well. He landed 8 takedowns against Wellington Turman in that matchup. He's had fights with over 9 minutes of control time before. We know he can be a very dominant wrestler, shall he give him the opportunity, and I think that if he wants to go out here and win this fight, I think he's going to have to utilize that wrestling. So as close this fight is, especially on DraftKings, I side more towards Petroski, not only for the pick side, but for DraftKings as well. We know Petroski's win condition to be probably routed in that wrestling, whereas Fremd, I've seen him put up a 66-point decision win before, and I do think if he wins, it's probably because of a later onslaught. He doesn't have the same wrestling equity. I don't know if he finishes on the feet too early either. I think that Petroski's fought the better level of competition, utilizes that grappling to win this fight, and in doing so could be a live GPP target to play at 7.9K. Next up, this is a great fight here. 13-2 Montel Jackson, 14-6-1 Blackshear, and what looks like on face value like a striker versus grappler matchup. Montel Jackson has always been been that super lanky striker with incredible accuracy and a ton of knockdowns. He has 10 knockdowns in his last 6 fights, and 6 fights in a row with a knockdown. The guy has a ton of power in his hands. He can put people to sleep. He is a very dangerous striker as long as he's on the feet, and he's typically had this height and reach advantage where he's been able to utilize that striking. He also has a pretty sneaky grappling game where, he also does have a pretty sneaky wrestling game where he can go out there, land takedowns if he decides to, if that's the route he wants to go down to. I think he's pretty well rounded, but we have seen him taken down before. We have seen him wrestled, and that's really what Blackshear is going to bring to this equation. Blackshear has landed a takedown in each one of his UFC bouts so far. He's someone who landed 4 last time against Bautista in a really close affair there, has gotten a twister in the UFC, a ton of ground success there, and he is going to look to get this fight down to the ground. On the feet, I do think Blackshear is a competent striker. I do favor Montel Jackson way more on the feet, especially with that power. But I do think it's a pretty close fight. I kind of understand where the line is now. I think if I had to choose, gun to my head, who is the fighter who has been at the top, I think fought at a level competition, who is going to win the striking exchanges and whose cardio I've seen play out pretty well, is going to be a guy, Montel Jackson. But when it comes down to seeing this fight happens out as a whole, I don't think it's a blowout either way. I actually think Blackshear is a very, very live underdog to come out here and have success, and because of that, he's someone I'm definitely looking to target on DraftKings. 7.6K Blackshear is a guy whose success is routed in grappling success. He's going to go out there, look to take down Montel Jackson, because that's where he's going to have his best path to victory. I like his ability to go out there and push a good takedown heavy pace. I think he can have top control. I think he can threaten submissions. And when I've seen Montel Jackson lose, it's when he's stuck on his back. So because of that, I think that the value is leaning me towards picking Blackshear here. I think he can compete in the feet, although I give the bigger moments and the power to Montel Jackson, the ground edge, and I think the aggressive grappling is going to be there for Blackshear. And as long as he doesn't gas out, I think he's someone who can have success, especially in the wrestling. And I do like to see that kind of thing. So at 7.6K, I do like Blackshear. He's going to pick to win as well. I think it's a very close fight, and I would not be opposed to you picking the better, rangier striker here in Montel Jackson, who he himself is someone who has had some great drafting scores. 131 against Baez, 140 against Clares, 106 against Yaya. He himself can be a pretty solid drafting target as well, but I think those are in matchups where he's either had a chinnier opponent in front of him or someone he can look to take down, and I think here he's going to be a guy looking to keep this on the feet, pitter-patter from the outside, hopefully land that powerful shot, but I've seen good durability from Blackshear. I think Blackshear's going to be the aggressor on the mat, so because of that, I tend to lean more towards the Blackshear side on DraftKings. 8.6K Montel Jackson is I want to call him a GPP play because he is so predicated on knockdown success to hit the optimal lineup this week that I think he's more of a dangerous play. I prefer Blackshear. He's with Vic to win. I do think he has the grappling path to victory to go out there and score very well if he does win this fight. I do like him to go out there and do so, and I think it's going to be a terrific matchup. Next up, we have the 7-1 Luana Santos versus the 10-4 Maria Agapova. Fun women's fight here at 125. Luana Santos is a big favorite in this matchup, someone who is 2-0 inside the UFC and has had some decent performances. She dominated Killer Miller in that matchup there in the first one, and then went out there and utilized her takedown success, stayed safe against a pretty good judoka and grappling expert there at Egger to win that fight on the mat there. She can have diverse weapons to her arsenal. I think she is someone who can compete in multiple aspects of MMA, and she is someone who I think is the favorite for a good reason here. I like her wrestling success, and I especially like her wrestling success against someone like Maria Agapova. Maria Agapova was at one point a highly touted prospect, was like a minus 1,400 favorite or not, where she went out there and dropped the ball against Sheena Dobson. She is someone who has phenomenal striking, great range. I think for as long as this fight's on the feet, I think Maria Agapova has a solid chance to win this because she can strike from distance and land powerful shots. But we've seen her ground game kind of exposed, her defensive grappling exposed actually at that. She's been finishing all 3 of her UFC losses. She is someone who I think can give up the back too easily, can put herself in a precarious situation, and doesn't really defend the hands too much when we're talking about submissions. Not only that, we've seen her pounded out from top control as well, and I think she's someone who just has these deficiencies in her game, where although she's a solid offensive grappler, can be taken down, can be put in precarious situations. Luana Santos is going to do that. She's going to test that defensive grappling, and not only that, as Maria Agapova has been super front-loaded, almost finishing Sheena Dobson before getting finished late, and this fight is at elevation. It seems like all the stars are lining up for Luana Santos to have success here. Santos is going to be the better grappler. She's going to push an offensive wrestle heavy pace, and although Maria Agapova can probably win the striking, that itself is close, whereas I don't think the wrestling and the cardio difference is close either here. I think Luana Santos wins this fight. I think she's a better grappling. I think she's a better cardio, and although I like Maria Agapova, and I do think she has the opportunity to beat some people at this level, I like Luana Santos more in this matchup. I think it's a fun one. Pick a Santos. DraftKings wise though, I think she's very live. 9.2K. She has wrestling upside. We've seen her go to it before, 2 takedowns last time, and I think that she has a clear path to victory. Jillian Robertson was able to go out there, submit her, score very well in the process. Same with Marina Moroz. I think at 9.2K, she's a pretty sneaky option against someone who we've seen not only submitted, but tire out later in fights. I think Luna Santos 9.2K is a very solid option up top. Now, do you choose her over Bonfim? Do you choose her over Rose and Rodriguez? That's really the issue this week. I think she's one of my favorite options up top. We'll talk about Rose, talk about Rodriguez, we'll talk about Ponzinnibio, but I mean, aside from Bonfim, not many people below her have that same grappling equity. Almost nobody have that same grappling equity up in that top range. So a 9.2K, I will be into Luna Santos. I think she wins at a high clip, and often it comes with wrestling. Next up, we have the 10-3 Jasudavicius, Canadian girl, going up there against short notice opponent, 6-0, highly touted Fatima Kline. And Kline is someone who, like I mentioned, is extremely highly touted, undefeated fighter, girlfriend of Aaron Blanchfield, someone who is a very, very dangerous prospect who we've wanted to see in the UFC for a long time now. She has been steamrolling through. I think she's multiple champ there on the regional scene, someone who has had opportunities to go out there and succeed and has looked dominant in doing so. She was supposed to fight in a contender series, and now she gets this step up here against someone who was ranked in the top 15, might still be at this point, who knows, and Jasudavicius. Kline, like I mentioned, has all the things going for her right now. Undefeated fighter, phenomenal ground game, really good cardio too, and really decent striking. She seems to be a very well-rounded prospect who often does fight at 115, so we'll give her that here, but someone who seems to have all the tools to really have some success. And I think when it projects to long-term, I do love Jasudavicius. I think she's an absolute savage, but I think Kline could have title aspirations, or sorry, top 5, top 10 aspirations at this point of her career at 115, and I think she projects as the fighter better long term. But in this matchup, she is coming in on short notice at elevation against someone in Jasudavicius who is not someone you want to go easy against. Jasudavicius is a tall, big girl who will push an extremely heavy pace, look to go out there and throw all caution to the wind. She does not care about striking defense. She will push forward, she will swing, put her head down, shoot takedowns, look to be the aggressor. And although Fatima Kline may be the better technical fighter of the two, Jasudavicius is going to push pace on you, really going to test that cardio elevation, test that short notice nature, test that physicality that you'd have, and really look to put Kline on her back and look to just impose a lot of damage on her. And although I understand Kline, like I mentioned, being the better prospect long term, I'm going with Jasudavicius here. I'm going with the Canadian girl, and it could come back to haunt me. Kline can be the real deal here. I do not doubt that, but Jasudavicius is someone who's going to push forward. She is not someone who's easy to deal with. She's going to be the bigger girl who's had a full camp, who is going to be better elevation. And although Kline can win minutes here, I think it's Jasudavicius who is winning the optics, landing more damage, pushing a pace, looking to break someone like Kline. I just think it's a tough matchup to have on her debut. That being said, it's an interesting one on DraftKings because, like I said, Jasudavicius is an underdog here. She's someone who scored 170 in her last time. She has phenomenal pace out there. She's not going to score 170 here. Kline does have a really solid ground game, but in fights where she's gone out there and fought to close decisions, scored 85 against Hansen. She would have scored 80 against Cortez in a win there, 85 against Maverick. She showed she could wrestle pretty often. She showed she can land a ton of volume, have good cardio, and I do think she's a very light underdog to win at 7.8K. I love her in cash. I love her in a lot of these options for her to go out there and land a ton of volume because I don't think she's going to win a distance striking affair. If she's winning, she's pushing a pace, she's wrestling, she's landing a ton of significant strikes there, and she's scoring well on DraftKings. So in a win, I think Jasmine scores very well. Flip side of things, Kline, I have to see her upside. I don't see her finishing Jasmine too often, so for that reason, it's hard for me to pick her at 8.4K. I guess she has some upside, but I do prefer the options around her in this slate. I think I'm picking Jasmine here, and although I would love to bet on Kline in the future, I do think she could have some great aspirations going forward. Let's roll with the Canadian on this one. Next up, this one actually is my favorite fight in the entire card. 10-1 Joshua Van, 15-6 Charles Johnson. Striker's delight, short notice affair. Happy Joshua Van's going out here again, and he's facing someone, Charles Johnson, who I have not got right recently. Charles Johnson is someone who I've lost money back against because he's a solid striker, but horrible takedown game, can be taken down, can be controlled, and he's not going to have to worry about here. What we're going to get here is two strikers you're going to go at it. Joshua Van, although he starts slow, rips the body, phenomenal leg kicks, great volume, and has put on a very impressive performance in the UFC so far, really gaining a lot of fans. Charles Johnson has been on a win streak himself. He starts a bit slower as well and then just boxes his way. Great reads, great in and out of the pocket, great volume, great cardio, and he himself, if he needs to, can go out there mixing takedowns. I don't think that'll happen here. I think what we're going to get is a battle between two strikers who want to go out there and have a lot of success. Both guys have good cardio. I'm not putting elevation into that. Both guys are extremely durable. I think it's going to come down to who can win the minutes. And although I think it's maybe close in the line and tails, I am siding with Joshua Van here. He's a guy who mixes up the levels very, very well. He's going to be the guy probably on the front foot here who's going to be not only landing to the head of Charles Johnson, but mixing up his weapons, putting out a constant pace, and just landing the more damaging shots. Charles Johnson lands a lot of shots, there's no doubt about it, but I think Van hits harder. I think he's going to be quicker to the punch, the guy moving forward, and a guy who I just see winning the optics more often. Because of that, I do have Van winning. I have Van winning by decision. I think it's going to be a relatively close fight because I do think it's going to be a striker's delight, but one that's going to be very entertaining for the fans. The pick is Joshua Van, and I do think gets it done. DraftKings wise though, I don't know how much I want this fight. Joshua Van, yes, has scored great. He scored 134 last time, 106 against Borjas, but this is going to be striking only. He landed 2 takedowns against Borjas. I don't think he's landing any takedowns here, although he has a ton of striking upside. I mean, he landed 165 there. He could land 100, 200 here. Not much grappling upside, not much finish upside. Do I want to prioritize him over Alhassan or the higher end option on the slate? I'm not sure. Of course, I'll be sprinkling him in. I'll be playing a ton of him in cash, but I'm not going to make him my number one priority on GPP because there are so many options this week and because he doesn't have that same finish or grappling equity I usually want to target. Johnson himself is also a solid option in cash. He should land a ton of volume. Even in his losses, he scored well. 43 against Esteban on that loss there, 34 against Osborne. He's just not going to go out there and blow you out of the water either. No grappling upside, no finishing upside. He's like a similar option this one. He'll probably land 150 strikes, but without the win, that's not really optimal there. I'm picking Van. I'm going to be playing him, especially in cash, but I'm not prioritizing him. I think there are better high upside targets this week with more grappling success or more finish upside. So for that reason, maybe I'll just sit back and enjoy. Next up, 10-6 Cody Brundage versus the 12-6 Abdulrazak Alhassan, and this is going to be an extremely dynamic, explosive fight. And then interesting one to break down. Cody Brundage is a guy who we've seen quit there before, a guy who we've seen fight Bo Nickel, a guy who's been up and down all over the UFC. He's got a ton of power in his hands early on. He's very explosive, solid wrestling base as well. I do think this matchup is going to have some clear wrestling upside. Abdulrazak Alhassan, we know what he is. He's a one-trick pony, and I have to really keep him to that. He's a guy with a ton of knockout power, and he is just round one KO or bust. He does not have much pass around KO. Not very good cardio, takedown defenses in there, and he's not really winning minutes. We saw him taken down multiple times in the last bout, taken down by Buckley as well, but a guy who just can take your head off in the first 5 minutes, and if not, it's going to lose the fight. A ton of power with that past him, and I do think there is a world where he goes out there and bonks Cody Brundage. I think Cody Brundage is extremely hittable. We've seen him quit too, and I think that Abdulrazak Alhassan can knock his head off. I'm not saying it can't happen, but I'm going to go with Cody Brundage here. I'm going to go with the underdog, actually, and it kind of hurts me to say it because I'm not the biggest Brundage fan. I don't like the way he quits in fights sometimes, but he's got a clear grappling path to victory. I think he's got a decent camp around him who are going to want him to go out there and push a wrestle heavy pace. I think he has the better cardio of the two, especially at elevation. And although I think Alhassan has incredible power on the feet in his own right, we've seen Alhassan knocked out before, and Brundage does have some decent hand speed. So Brundage is not a top fighter in the UFC here. Let's not get me wrong there, but I think he has more paths here. And although Alhassan has round one KO upside, I don't think it's indicative of a minus 160 price tag here. So give me Cody Brundage. I think there's multiple ways of getting it done. I think he utilizes grappling. I think he utilizes cardio, and I think he wins this fight. It could look very sloppy in the second round. It could be a disgusting fight at elevation, but give me Brundage, utilizing their wrestling, and I'm going to take and get it done in the first round here. I think he's a solid play. Because of that, on DraftKings, my favorite GBP option is this fight here. It's either going to be Brundage with wrestling success and finish upside. Got 101 against Reese, 96 against Malkoon, 114 against Gore. He has a ton of upside, especially 7.7K. One of my favorite GBP underdogs because I think he has a ton of round one and grappling upside. Then you have to look at Alhassan too. 95 against Ribeiro, 125 against DiChirico, 131 against Price, 121 against Fossey. Like, this guy is the real deal when it comes to round one boom or bust. He is drafting his gold, and then for that reason, if Alhassan wins here, it's going to score very well. 8.5K, a ton of upside. I'll be playing this fight from both sides, but like I said, I'm picking Brundage, so I will also have it on DraftKings. Love it from a draft perspective, though. Should be a fun fight for as long as it lasts. Going to be clenched a bit during this one, but give me Cody Brundage. Continuing on the main card, 11-1 Christian Rodriguez, 29-11 Julian Erosa, Juicy J. A fun fight here, and it's been interesting because Christian Rodriguez has fought the hype train after hype train, has derailed a couple that beat Raul Rosas Jr. I'll never forget that, beating Simon, and now seeing him as the favorite is really interesting here. Seeing him as a big favorite on DraftKings, 8.9K, is interesting. I mean, I guess he was 9.4 against Weems, but he was an underdog to Bulgarian, underdog to Rosas Jr., underdog to Pierce. He seems to be a very, let's say, eager dog, a guy who will fight for your money. He's a great scrambler. He's a great striker. He will push at a heavy pace. He's a guy with great cardio, great durability. He's a guy you like to get behind. Yes, he can be taken down, but he will not accept bottom position. He will continue to work. He's a very good at making reads on the feet. He got a decent submission game in his own right. He's a very solid fighter. And it's interesting seeing him as a favorite here because we haven't really seen him be the aggressor. Is he going to be the aggressor in this matchup? Probably not. Julian Erosa himself is one of the most dangerous fighters in this division. 29-11, he is a very dangerous fighter. I mean, he got a round one sub against Ramos last time, submitted Jourdain, I won't forget that, when he knocked out Landwehr. When he's winning fights, he's scoring very well. He's got great submission, good guillotine actually to be exact, but a great ability to go out there and mix in those front headlocks. He's got great power on the feet, good range and length as well. He's a very dangerous finisher, let's put it that way. But he can be very aggressive. He can be knocked out in his own right. He can be taken down. He's a guy who is just a very killer to be killed. And I love that style, especially from DraftKings perspective. Don't get me wrong, but it's very tough to trust this guy, especially against a higher echelon division because he is so hittable. He's a guy I've seen knocked out before and someone who can put himself in some dangerous situations trying to prioritize that finish. I think in this matchup here, I've seen a lot of love for Erosa, and I get it. He's super dangerous. Christian Rodriguez, it's interesting making him go from a plus 250 underdog to a minus 300 favorite. when he's facing such a dangerous fighter like Erosa, but I trust the durability of Rodriguez way more. I like Rodriguez's grappling success if Shally decided to go there. I think he's got the opportunity to land a ton of volume on his feet as his own right. I just think he's a guy who's the better technically and better sound defensively, let's put it that way. And I think he's a guy who wins this fight at a higher clip. Am I going to be playing on his money line at this price tag? Probably not, but I will be picking him to win. I do think he has more tools and get it done, and he's my pick to get it done. DraftKings wise, though, this is super interesting because typically I'd say stay away from Christian Rodriguez. I mean, he has never scored above 96 points, has 65-point win, 70-point win. He's not the biggest grappler. He's not the biggest finish upside guy. I mean, I completely understand why fading him would be a good option this week. Typically, I would fade him. But he's facing Julian Erosa, a guy who fights at such a heavy pace, who's going to force exchanges, and who has been knocked out. He's been knocked out in all 4 of his last losses, including being knocked out in the first round in his last 3. Because of how hittable he is, I think Rodriguez is a great GBP option at 8.9K. I like him more than Ponzinnibio. I like his potential lower ownership than Van to go up there and pay him at 8.9K. I think he's a great pivot option in that top range. Someone who typically doesn't score well, so maybe his box score is going to scare people away. I think at 8.9K, along with the popularity of Erosa, he's a great GBP play up that top range. Flip side of things, Erosa, because of his box score, because of his finishing upside, is also a great play. And his last win scored 93, 96, 112, 101, 131. Phenomenal drafting scores. Because I want to sprinkle some of him in there, but I don't see him winning too often. And for that reason, I prefer other plays in the slate. I will have some of them GBP to cover that finish upside, but I think I'm going with Rodriguez here. Next up, 15-1 Gabriel Bonfim versus the 10-3 Ange Loosa. Bonfim coming back after getting that 0 taken away from him. He got gassed out here, which is ironic because he is fighting in Denver here versus Ange Loosa, a guy who was getting dominated in his last fight by Brian Battle, and then got eye poked, took the way out, and here we are now. Maybe they're punishing Loosa for that fight last time by giving such a dangerous fighter here in Gabriel Bonfim, but I think this fight has multiple layers. As long as these guys are fresh, Bonfim is a million times better fighter. He has got incredible quick hands on the feet. He's got a phenomenal jiu-jitsu game, including that guillotine, and he is a prime finisher. A lot of these first-round finishes, and I do think you can go out there and finish a guy like Ange Loosa. But Loosa's tough. He has survived a lot. I don't finish like that, but he has also never fought anyone as dangerous as Gabriel Bonfim. Because of that, I think there's multiple layers. Again, I completely understand why Bonfim's a favorite. He should finish him early. He is so much quicker on the feet. He is so much more dangerous on the mat. He should have this opportunity to win here. But if it gets out of the first round, Bonfim is notorious for gassing. He's a guy who gassed hard last time, and now being in elevation against a guy in Loosa who can stay in these fights, who is pretty durable, I think Loosa's a lot more live than the line entails. Now, enough for me to play him, maybe not. I still think Bonfim wins. I think Bonfim's the favorite, but it gives me some caution to playing Bonfim at 9.3K. I think Bonfim wins this fight. I think he's better almost everywhere in this matchup, but I'm scared of him gassing out. That's why I won't play him on the money line. But on DraftKings, I'm going to be playing him for sure. His win equity scores very, very well. In his wins, Bonfim has scored 97 and 118. Great striking on the feet, great guillotine shall I get there, and great transitions. Loosa's been taken down. Loosa's very hittable on the feet. I think Bonfim has the opportunity to get him out there early. A win for Bonfim scored very, very well, and he's not that expensive at 9.3K. So I'll be playing some of him. I think he's a very good option this week. I think he'll be very, very popular as well. So because of that, is someone who you're going to want to play. If you're looking to fade him and hope Loosa survives, you'll get a lot of leverage in GBP, but Bonfim's my pick to win. He should be high owned, and I will be playing a bunch of him as well due to that early finish upside. Loosa, I don't see him win for the later rounds. I mean, if he does win, it'll probably break the slate. Scored 123 and 115 in his 2 wins, but he's a very dangerous play because he can be finished. I mean, McKee had him on skates. He's been almost knocked out before, and Bonfim is probably the best fighter he's fought aside from maybe Brian Battle. Bonfim's extremely dangerous. Should get it done here, but a very layered fight, let's put it that way. Let's just hope if you're playing Bonfim, he doesn't gas out too early at elevation. Short notice affair here, 27-13, Drew Dober is 13-2 John Silva. Yes, the John Silva that knocked out my Canadian boy, Charles Jourdain, 2 weeks ago. On short notice here, up a weight class against Drew Dober. Good for Silva. Fast tracking away here, fighting nerds. I love that camp. And he is someone who is, I haven't been the biggest fan of, let's put it that way. He's got a ton of power. There's no denying that. First guy to ever knock out Charles Jourdain. Incredibly explosive, good elbows, good ability to make reads, but still a guy who I don't see the biggest minute winner, and still a guy who I think can be exposed as the fight goes on. This fight against Drew Dober, though, is an interesting one because typically Drew Dober is a guy who's just got a durable chin, wait for the fire and throw back his own damage his own way too, and I think is going to make it for an incredibly entertaining matchup. 2 guys throwing with fighting and intention at every single time, just who can go out there and survive better. I think in this case here, I've seen Dober's chin rocked more often. That still gives me that intrigue, but I think Dober's been fighting at this level a bit longer. Maybe it's making him a bit, long in the tooth because of that, but I'm going to have to pick Dober again. I mean, if I pick Charles Jourdain, I'm going to pick Drew Dober to be the bigger fighter here, potential takedown upside, and just go swing for swing with John Silva. The more I see that, the more I'm leaning towards Silva, actually, because maybe Dober's chin has been cracked before, but we'll stick with it here. Dober, a guy who is extremely explosive in his own right, can maybe catch Silva bigger preparing for this fight here. I think Dober is a guy who's just been at the top longer. And although Silva may be having a cross of career trajectories, I'm going to hope that Drew Dober's chin can hold up one last time here. But because of the way they're going to be swinging, because of the way they're going to be throwing with fighting and attention, I think it's a great fight target on DraftKings. I honestly like Silva more just because I've seen Dober's chin cracked. I think that Silva is just going to be KO or bust. Scored 115 and 104 in his 2 wins. And at 8K, he's going to be a very popular option. I will be playing into him because the same way that Dober's been knocked out. I mean, knocked out by Frivola there, dropped by McKinney. I think he's just a guy who we have to be very cautious about at this point of his career. I will be playing Silva because of that. But also have some Dober. He has scored very well in his wins. 112 against Glenn, 93 against Green, 110 against McKinney. He's a guy who's going to throw the fighting and attention. He's going to have a ton of power in his hands in the own right. And I think at 8.2K, he's a solid option. The more I talk about it, the more I favor Silva. I will be playing more Silva on DraftKings, but we'll stick with my gut. See if that changes on Twitter at GamblesGordo. But the pick is be Drew Dober, and what is a phenomenal matchup. Co-main event time, the 29-7 Santiago Ponzinnibio versus the 19-5 Muslim Salikhov. I'm going to be honest with you guys. This is the fight that maybe I have the least interest in the card. It's the co-main. I think it could be a great striking affair. I think it could be a fun one, but an older fighter in Ponzinnibio who has been knocked out a bunch before, 41-year-old Muslim Salikhov who has been knocked out in his own right too. Ponzinnibio, Salikhov, both guys coming off knockout losses, getting older in their careers, strikers. It doesn't really scream too much interest to me. The question just is there going to be a finish? I think we look at it from a macro perspective. The better volume and minute winner is going to be a guy in Ponzinnibio. The better counter striker is going to be a guy in Muslim Salikhov. Is Salikhov able to land that power punch knock at Ponzinnibio? Who knows? I think I'm going to lean with Ponzinnibio here being the better volume striker, better minute winner. But both these guys have durability issues. I think both these guys can get finishes in their own right. I think more often than not, it's either Ponzinnibio decision or Salikhov knockout. So because of that, I'm cautious on both sides. I think that although I've seen Salikhov knocked out, and because of that Ponzinnibio is a live option to finish, I haven't seen him score over 100 points since 2017, and he's sitting at 8.8K. I much prefer Christian Rodriguez or a Santos or a Bonfim over him this week. I'm not getting him too often. If I'm playing either of these guys in this fight, it'd probably be Muslim Salikhov, 7.4K. I'm not picking him to win, but I've seen him get those knockouts before. Knocked out Fiallo, scored 82 points there. Knocked out Taleb, scored 104. He's a guy who I do think his win condition is more predicated on knockout, where I could see Ponzinnibio going out there scoring 16 in a decision. So not if I want too much ownership as a whole. If I had to, I would pick Salikhov on DraftKings, but my pick to win is Ponzinnibio. I think he does more with the volume and, let's say, dictates the striking exchanges to get a decision here. Could be a fight that comes back to haunt me, but maybe not my favorite fight in the card. Give me Ponzinnibio to get it done, though. And the main event, the 12-6 Rose Namajunas versus the 11-1 Tracy Cortez. A bunch of matchups come together in this one. Cortez taking it kind of on short notice, but she will come prepared. Cardio has never been an issue for her, and she's been acclimated to this cardio. Let's put it that way. Wow, interesting fight. I'm picking Rose Namajunas. I love Thug Rose, I always have, and I think she's just going to be the more proven fighter with more experience, more 5-round experience, and not only that, but just more ways to get it done. I think when it comes down to it, Tracy Cortez is pretty predicated in that grappling success, and she is holding down opponents, winning 2 rounds because of it, fighting close, but in 5 rounds, I don't think she's going to be able to go out there, take down, or hold Rose to win 3 rounds. And on the feet, I think Rose has more weapons, is quicker to the punch, is someone who I can see winning the strike exchange more often. Because of that, I think Rose just has way more paths to get it done. I think I love Rose's striking. I love her scrambling ability. And I think Rose could even put Trace Cortez on her back end as well. We don't really know how Cortez fares from bottom position. I think it makes for a very interesting dynamic. Yes, I see a path for Trace Cortez. It is you're going to go out there landing takedown after takedown after takedown, but I don't think Rose is ever going to set off for that bottom position. I would have thought that Rebos would have more success there, but if you're not being held down by Esparza or Wei Li, I don't necessarily know Cortez can be the one to do that. Because of that, the pick is Rose. I think she gets it done by decision, more striking upside, maybe makes into wrestling success of her own right, but just a fighter who I think has more paths can get done, more experience at this 5-round event, and more experience at this top end of the division. DraftKings-wise, though, it's an interesting one. Cortez, 7.2K. I think if she wins, like I said, it's predicated on wrestling, and because of that, I will probably have some of her. Never fought in a 5-rounder, so I don't really know what it looks like, but I think she's going to need takedown after takedown after takedown to win this fight, and in a win at 7.2K will probably break the slate. Rose, though, 9K, she's my question ball, because 105 last time in her win, she has 5 rounds to work. She has a more, let's say, still opponent in front of her, Trace Cortez, and I do think Rose can not only land takedowns her own right, but land a bunch of strikes against Cortez, who is pretty hittable, but pretty durable. The question I then have is, in 5 rounds, can she outscore the wrestling success of Santos, the finish upside of Bonfim, the lower ownership and finish upside of Rodriguez? I don't think this is a week where you have to force in the main event. I will have some Rose because of that upside, like I mentioned, but I'm not forcing her in. She does have 5 rounds to work, so she's great in cash. She's someone I'm looking to play, but it's definitely not someone who I'm making a must play this week. I would be content with skipping the main event as a whole, but I think she's still a viable option. I prefer going with Santos and Rodriguez and maybe going stars and scrubs here, but very interesting matchup. I'm picking Rose. I do think she gets it done either way she wants, probably by that strike and probably by decision, and what is a pretty fun fight. But that's going to do it for me here on the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. Quickly running through my quick picks. We're taking Rose Namajunas in the main event, Santiago Ponzinnibio, Drew Dober, even though I could flip a coin on that one, Gabriel Bonfim, Christian Rodriguez, Cody Brundage, Joshua Van, Jasudavicius, Luana Santos, Damon Blackshear, and Andre Petroski. On DraftKings, let's break it down by price range. Bonfim, round 1 KO success, good GBB play. You could get some leverage by going against him. Santos, most grappling upside in the entire slate, good play in cash, someone I will be playing a bunch at 9.2K. Rodriguez, my favorite pivot play at the top range. I don't think he's going to be as popular, but has that same round 1 KO upside. Rose, Santiago, Van, Jackson, all solid plays in cash, but it's guys who I think are mostly predicated in striking success, don't have that same finish upside, don't have that same knockout upside, so someone who is just not as valuable to me this week as the other people around him. In the mid-range, I think Alhassan, Fremd, Silva, and Petroski are all phenomenal options. Petroski do the wrestling upside, Alhassan and Silva do that KO1 upside. Underdog-wise, I love Brundage. I think he has a ton of grappling and potential finish upside early on, but I do also like Blackshear for wrestling success, Jasudavicius for her pace and pressure, and I think as the deep bottom range, the win condition for all of Salikhov, Erosa, and Cortez score very, very well. So I'm mixing a bunch of that around. Hopefully I was able to give you enough insight into what I'm playing on DraftKings. Reignmakers-wise, I think I gotta go with Bonfim, Santos, Rodriguez. Let's go with Silva and Brundage, throwing out those two, maybe a bit riskier this week. And then betting wise, nothing locked in yet. Be sure to check me out on Twitter at GamblesGord or check out CoolBet, and where I'll be hopefully releasing another best bet video this week. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. I wish you guys all the best of luck in all your DraftKings and betting endeavors this weekend, guys, and let's make some money.